Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sarah Falion. I'm a dietitian with the San Ildefonso Pueblo Nutrition Education Program. I'm really glad that you're here today, and want to just point out that we do have these nutrition education presentations once a month. The idea being that you can learn a little bit about how to improve your health through diet. So before we start, I would like to give a few shout outs, particularly to Governor McKeno and the Tribal Council. Thank you for your ongoing commitment to nutrition and health and wellness. And yesterday, the team put together an amazing wellness fair. And so thank you to Troy and Thelma, Claudia and Raylene, and everybody else that worked on that very hard to pull that all together. So I had fun, and I hope some of you were there and had fun as well. And also to Dine and her mom, who cooked some great tacos. Thank you. And also a shout out to all of you who are streaming in to take some time to learn a little bit about your nutritional health. It says I'm signed out. This is just an outline of the program. We are going to do a little bit of review, looking at some healthy eating practices. This will sort of tie together what we've covered in some of the previous classes, but in the context of the holidays, which can be a challenge for people. And this particular month, we're going to you'll be making some goals, some health goals. And so we're going to talk about how to make a goal and personalize it for your particular situation. And so toward the end, we'll have an activity where you're actually making a commitment, taking a pledge, and then making a plan. And certainly we'll have time for questions and discussion as well. So just a little bit about the program objectives. You'll learn some ways how to maintain your weight during the holidays, as well as learning 2 ways to control portions and really trying to limit overeating, which is very common around the holidays. And then thirdly, to maybe anticipate some of the problems that you might anticipate that make it difficult for you to kind of stay on track, and then developing that action plan. So it's probably no surprise to you that Americans gain weight over the winter months. We're less active. There's a lot of richer foods. We're indoors more. And so between Halloween and really Easter, there's a lot of gatherings and special foods. So this is just a time to sort of take note and be aware of what you can do to try to keep on track with your health goals. And in addition, I think it might be helpful to look at how we celebrate. And certainly eating is a wonderful way to come together and celebrate, but also looking at some other ways that we can reward ourselves and feel good that maybe don't necessarily involve food. The holidays are stressful. There's lots of extra added duties and different commitments. And so a lot of times, as we discussed last month, you may be resorting to food to eat because you're under stress. And very often there is social pressure to eat and drink as well. And so all this goes into the background about, why we may gain weight and why it may be difficult for us. But hopefully after today, you'll have some tools to work with. So a big component of eating well, in my opinion, is planning. And so it starts even before you get to the grocery store, where you sit down with the family, you decide maybe what meals you'd like for the week, which meals you're going to have together as a family. And then from there, you put together a grocery list. And hopefully you'll stay with that grocery list so you don't overspend or buy, things that maybe aren't going to really support your goals. And certainly avoiding shopping on an empty stomach is a good plan. And I know when I don't follow that, there's all kinds of things that end up in my basket. So the idea of this is to plan ahead. And so you'll have some meals that you've maybe planned ahead, some maybe some soups or stews or casseroles, things that you can prepare ahead of time and then freeze. And then on those busy days, you can take that out of the freezer, and then all you have to do is heat it up. And the same thing with the snacks. If you have maybe some vegetables cut up, or you have some maybe little sandwiches or something that you can snack on, that's ready to go. And that will support your eating less convenience foods or less fast foods if you plan ahead a little bit. So overeating is very common, especially, as I say, in the winter months, and with a lot of gatherings and feasts and such. It's important not to skip meals. Some people think, oh, well, I'll only eat one meal a day. And that really doesn't serve you, because you need the food in your system to help metabolize it. And it actually speeds up your metabolism if you have maybe 3 small meals a day. It will support better food choices if you're not starving when you have your first meal of the day. So if you're hungry, some of you may be quite active and young, and you may need to have 1 or 2 snacks between your meals, and that's fine. I just suggest that you check in and say, am I really hungry, or am I bored? If you're hungry, then surely have that snack, and hopefully you have something prepared that will be a little bit more on the healthy side. So another thing to consider is the size of your portions. Usually, many times when we're not really focused, we will just sort of dole out what we think looks good to have. And if you're really trying to watch your blood sugars or maintain your weight, or maybe you have high blood pressure and you're trying to limit those salty foods, portions become very important. And there's actually serving sizes that are designated. For those of you who are diabetics, you know that certain carbs are in certain amounts of serving sizes. And so to begin to learn about that and to kind of measure what you're serving yourself. And one way to help with that is to use a smaller plate. And they've done studies with this, where these smaller plates compared with a large plate, the same amount of food, people will tend to eat less when they use a smaller plate. Certainly, these foods that are really high in salt and sugar and fat, just try to take a small portion of that, maybe just a tablespoon or a small little portion of that. Other things that help with the controlling of how much you're eating and less overeating is to sit down to eat. We, in our society today, we're very mobile. A lot of us are, eating in the car, eating out the door. I've done this all myself. So sitting down to eat is really the best way to digest your food and enjoy it. And then waiting before you have second helpings. Wait about 15 or 20 minutes, because it takes about that amount of time for your brain and your digestive tract to communicate, and to see if you're still really hungry. And if you are, sure, go for it. This is a diagram of a plate, and this is helpful just so you don't necessarily have to measure necessarily, but you can visualize the plate. And if half of your plate has what we call non-starchy vegetables, that's going to fill you up, but it's not going to give you a lot of extra calories or excess fat or sodium. If they're just steamed, and prepared very lightly. Just as a review, some of the non-starchy vegetables you can see listed here, things like broccoli, carrots, green beans, tomatoes, celery. Those are going to give you, as I say, some bulk, but not excessive calories. On the lower right-hand side, you'll see a quarter of your plate is with some type of protein. This shows a picture of a nice piece of salmon. You might prefer beef. I would suggest leaner cuts of beef or hamburger. Chicken, maybe remove the skin to get rid of some of the excess fat. But fish is a nice option as well. And then at the top quarter, would be some type of a starch. So you might have maybe a small potato, or you might have some corn, you might have peas or pasta, something like that. But this would give you a balanced meal, and this is often what diabetics will use, this type of a plan. So in terms of the holiday, there's lots of favorite foods that people have. And, you know, if you choose things like baked vegetables or steamed, baked squash, zucchini, beans, salad, greens, things like that, again, you're going to be having more of these non-starchy vegetables, things like fruit instead of sweets or baked goods. The beef, lean beef, turkey, fish, pork, things like that. Those will be nice, but when you have those, maybe really be aware of how much you're having in terms of gravies and dressings and things like that. You can enhance flavor. A lot of times people will use fat because it brings out the flavor, but you can use the things like lemon, garlic, different herbs, salsa, different nuts and seeds, and that can provide some flavor. And those that are cooking, if you can just be mindful of how much sugar you're adding to things and salt, you know, that will help you to have a healthier option. So really what we're talking about is balance. We're not saying you can never eat this or don't ever eat that, but just really try to have an awareness going into the meal, you know, what your plan will be. And again, limiting those high fatty foods, fried foods, cream-based, cheesy, a lot of processed meats. If you have those in small portions, you know, maybe just a bite. For those of you who have toddlers or you have grandchildren, you know, they have just like a tablespoon of something. And maybe, you know, when there's lots of options, like with many of the holiday meals, that might be an option for you. So this is planning for the indulgence. And I like this because it's not saying you won't indulge, because we do. We enjoy certain rich foods. But give some thought to that. If you know that you're going to be going to a party or you're having a special meal with maybe some rich foods, just kind of plan ahead so that you can sort of decide how you're going to spend your calories. And maybe instead of having, you know, a piece of pie like this, maybe you just have like a little sliver so that you savor each bite. And what's important is to just sort of read your body and stop when you're full. A lot of times we overeat because, oh, it just tastes so good, we want to eat more, but really we're full. And so that's just to pay attention to that. And, you know, all of us have what we call food triggers. You have a little bit and then you just want to have more. And so for me, chips, I mean, it's hard for me just to have 10, you know, tortilla chips. I mean, it just doesn't work. So it's a trigger food for me. So I usually try to stay away from those as much as possible. And so that's just something to learn about too with yourself. And then, you know, after you have an indulgence or you've had a big, you know, several big meals or something like that, then you want to plan the recovery. You want to, the next meal, eat lighter. Again, you don't want to skip a meal, but just maybe have lighter foods, and then maybe add like 15 minutes to your workout. Or if you walk, maybe walk a little bit more that day. And that way you'll kind of balance things out and you'll still be able to enjoy some of your favorite foods. So now we'll move on to party guidelines. And I'm not sure how much parties are going on with COVID, but there may be some opportunities where you're gathering with other people. And it's, you know, for these, it's recommended to not eat on an empty stomach because then it may be apt to overeat. So, you know, think about maybe having maybe an hour before, just having a light snack, preferably, especially, you know, for those diabetics in the audience, maybe having a snack that includes some protein. And so that will help you to be a little bit nourished before you, you know, go to the party. And then if you are bringing a meal or some, for a potluck, bring something that you know that you like that's going to support your health goals, so that you know that you have something that you can eat. And if you are in a situation where, you're at a buffet, a lot of the work parties, they might have a buffet set up. You want to be, again, conscious of what you're eating and the choices that you're making. And so you don't want to stand around the buffet and just sort of graze. It would be better to, take a small plate and then fill that up and then sit down to enjoy your meal. And then you're less likely to eat what we call, mindless eating, where you're just sort of, eating without really paying attention. And so this way, by sitting down, you're also eating more slowly and chewing your food. So you may have seen this slide before or something similar to it. One of the nutritionists that was here yesterday had, a talk about the beverages and high sugar in beverages. And so this also shows some of these favorite drinks that we have that are just loaded with calories and sugar. And so this is particularly important for people who are pre-diabetic or diabetic or trying to watch your weight. I mean, that caramel frappuccino, it's like 430 calories, 13 teaspoons of sugar. That's just one drink, of your day. And so if you decide that that's what you really want, maybe only have half of it, have a smaller portion, and then adjust your meal accordingly, like we were talking earlier. But really, these high sugar beverages are, in the long run, are not going to help you with your overall nutrition goals if you drink them on a regular basis. And sometimes they're presented as healthy. Some of the juices and things like that, some of them have more sugar than the soda drinks. So that brings up reading food labels. And so that would be something that we can discuss at another time, but just be aware of these beverages and that's a source of calories for you as well. It's best probably to limit alcohol during this, this time of year, or abstain if you have a problem. But, the importance is to stay hydrated. It's been very dry recently, so you want to drink water. And just to be aware that alcohol and mixers are oftentimes very high in calories as well. And so maybe consider some type of a festive non-alcoholic drink that, maybe you might have a little bit of, maybe like a half a cup of juice with a cup of mineral water. And then you could put like maybe a slice of orange in it or something, just kind of have something festive. So now we're going to move into the portion where we're talking about health goals a little bit. And so what this requires is to make a commitment to your health goal, whatever that might be. And you want to anticipate some of the problems that may come up for you, and in that way be proactive. And you know yourself best as to where you've had success and where there's been problems. And so really to take a look at some of these things head on so that you can then make goals that are going to work for you. And then that way you can enjoy this season and still balance, have some fun with some of the meals and enjoy the festivities, but still balance that out and still keep your health goals. And something that the governor said yesterday was, I really liked, he said, don't be afraid to ask for help. If you feel like you need help in whatever capacity, not just with nutrition, but, be sure to ask for help. There's definitely services out there. And then even within your family, to ask support from your family, friends, and your coworkers. If you have a certain goal that you're making, just say, hey, this is what I'm doing. And so you may see some differences. I may be declining certain foods, and don't take it personally. And so just ask for your help there with social support. If you are actively at this time losing weight and you're having success with that, that's great. Continue with what you're doing, but this is probably not a good time to start losing weight. It will probably take a lot of focus just to maintain your weight. That would be a great goal if you're just sort of starting out. And so you don't want to set yourself up for disappointment and failure. But maybe now would be a time to start really just sort of evaluating, oh, what do I eat? And, you can even do some things like food journals and things like that to sort of look at what your portions are and how much you're eating and what kinds of foods you're eating. But aim to maintain where you are as far as your weight. So in summary, what we've talked about is the importance of planning, planning your meals, making with a grocery list, and then having those healthier foods in your house, in the pantry, in the refrigerator, measuring your portions so serving sizes, looking at that, using a smaller plate, not skipping meals, and then planning your indulgences and then the recovery process with that. And then a point that I didn't mention, but keeping active is something that if you can keep active every day, or at least, as much as possible, that will help you too in terms of meeting your goals. So now let's take a look at, getting into the specifics of planning a goal. Some of you may have seen this, SMART goals, in a work setting, but you can apply this, to your personal life as well. And this is called the SMART goals, standing for SMART, standing for specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. And so the idea of being specific is that you're stating what is it that you want to achieve? What is your goal? And you're going to be a little bit specific with that. And the measurable part is that you're going to maybe break it down into smaller mini goals. And so as an example, you might say, oh, well, I want to eat healthier. Well, that's pretty general. That's a good goal, but it's pretty general. So maybe you might think more specifically, like, okay, I'm going to cut how much fast food I have in half. So instead of having it, 4 days a week, I'm going to cut it down to 2 days a week. So that's specific, and it's kind of a mini goal. It's measurable. You can see that you're what you're planning to do on a week by week basis. And then the achievable part is, you want to make a goal that's something that you can accomplish and that you can achieve. And, I've talked with people over the years, and they want to lose 30 pounds for their, daughter's wedding or what have you in a month's time or 2 months' time. And that's just probably not achievable and not real healthy. So that's important too. And that sort of ties in with being realistic, but realistic in the sense of what's important for you. So your doctor may say one thing about a goal, but maybe you're not ready to quit smoking. Maybe you are willing to walk 10 minutes a day or whatever it is that you feel motivated to do. You want to have it something that's relevant for you. And then the timeliness is that you give yourself some time to work with these goals, but you also give yourself a deadline and a date, and that will help you. So now what we're going to do is look at actually planning your goals and what will go into that. And so what I would suggest, and I have a little form on the next sheet that you can work with, but the first thing would be to decide what your goal is, what your nutrition goal is. And I might mention too that if for some of you that are Zooming in later or streaming in later, I'm happy to meet with you if you have some questions about this process or any other anything pertaining to your nutrition or your diet. And you can contact Raylene and she can help you get set up with an appointment. But yeah, the first step would be to write your nutrition goal, and then to kind of think about in the past, because some of you may have tried this before and it's not been successful, what has worked and maybe what hasn't worked. And so identifying those problems so that it can help you to meet your goal. And sometimes that's a hard process because we don't always want to look at those things. But, you know, are there social pressures? Are there, maybe you have sweet tooth, or you have kind of nervous energy and you're eating kind of stress eating, or whatever it is, to kind of take a look at that and identify it. And then you can kind of work with that in terms of making your goal. And then, you know, I believe that there are solutions to whatever problems we have. And so just kind of giving some thought to that as to, well, how can I solve this? You know, how can I overcome these barriers so I can achieve my goals? And then I think a really key part is who is going to support you in this process, because we all need support. And, you know, sometimes some people are not, we may love them, but they may not be really supportive of, you know, of our goals in that way. So maybe it might be somebody even outside of your family that helps you, maybe a coworker or a friend that's going to help you. So this is the plan that you can work with, and, you know, write down your goal. Again, identify your obstacles or anything that's going to be a barrier to meeting that goal, what a possible solution might be, and then your support system. And I suggest that you make a plan. You know, where are we? We're like the middle of November. So maybe through the end of December, make a plan, and then revisit it at the end of December, and then you can make a new plan. Or if you find that this plan is not working at all, then maybe you want to revisit it before that time. But this is something that will be an ongoing process probably for you. And things will change as your lifestyle changes, and as you have success, you may modify things. So are there any questions? Any comments? I do have a list of resources. The nutrition education program is listed. There's also the American Heart Association. That is a great website. They have lots of good information. It's a very easy website to navigate, really good information. And they do have a holiday guide, actually. So that might be something that you look at. A resource that I use that may have a little more technical information, but it's really for the lay public, is Center for Science in the Public Interest. And for some reason, that website, I can't see it, but I think you can see it. It's in blue, but yeah, that's a good organization. There's a lot of free information there too. If you feel like you have a problem with overeating and that you can't stop and you want to, this is a good program, this Overeaters Anonymous, and you can check out in your area support for that. I did also list the community college in Santa Fe. There may be other things in this area as well. Cooking classes. This is a direct line to the chef there. And certainly the farmers markets. I understand that the Pewaukee market is closed now from the website. That's the impression I got, but there is a Santa Fe market is open. And then another resource is Weight Watchers. That can be a little bit expensive, so that may not work for some of you, but they may have some free information there. And those diets are pretty balanced. So that's all that I have. I appreciate your attention and your time. And if there are no questions, we'll sign off and we'll see you next month. Thank you again.